28 years of spotless credit. Not a single missed payment. Not a single balance carried past the due date. I built it the way I built everything else that mattered in my life, brick by brick. Year by year. Through quiet discipline and small choices that added up to something worth protecting. And on a Wednesday morning in February, while I was standing at my kitchen counter, pouring a second cup of coffee, all 28 years of it were used to anchor a $550. 000 mortgage on a property I had never seen, in a city I hadn't visited in years, by a son-in-law I had welcomed into my home for a decade, and a daughter I thought I knew to her core. My name is Frank Deller. I'm 62 years old. Retired high school vice principal. Then principal. From Millbrook Falls, Tennessee, a mid-sized town in the eastern part of the state. The kind of place where the hills turn orange in October and people still wave when they pass you on a 2-lane road. I spent 29 years working inside Millbrook Falls Central High School, which means I spent 29 years watching people make decisions, students, parents, teachers, coaches, and over time I developed what I can only describe as a forensic relationship with cause and consequence. I could look at a situation on a Thursday afternoon and trace it back to the moment, sometimes 3 weeks earlier, when a different choice was still available. That skill, as it turned out, was about to become the most useful thing I owned. My daughter, Cassidy, is 34. She grew up in Millbrook Falls. Attended Central High, yes, the school where I was eventually principal, which meant she spent 4 years dodging the specific social awkwardness of being the boss's kid and moved to Nashville after college, where she eventually married a man named Derek Palumbo. Derek is 41. He works in commercial property development. He has the easy confidence of a man who is permanently calculating the leverage in every room, including the leverage embedded in the people sitting across from him. Cassidy had been an authorized user on my Regions Bank Platinum card since she was 22. It started during a cross-country move. She'd called me from a truck stop in Arkansas with a blown radiator hose, no cash, and a cat carrier in the back seat. I told her to put the repairs on the card. She did. The charge was $289. I paid it the same week without giving it a second thought. That was 11 years ago. Since then, the card had been used for an emergency dental procedure, 2 airline tickets home for Christmas, a month's rent during a layoff year, and a handful of grocery charges during a stretch when Derek's contracting firm was between projects and cash was tight. The card existed for emergencies. Cassidy and I had discussed this explicitly, more than once. The purpose was clear. The limit was understood. What I believed was also understood was that the card was not a credential, not a key to my financial identity, not a door to my credit history. I was wrong about that last part. On the morning of Wednesday, February 19th, at 9:20 m, my phone rang. The number showed a 615 area code I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Mr. Deller, this is Linda Harmon, calling from Summit Bridge Lending in Brentwood. I'm reaching out regarding the co-borrower documentation for the Clearwater Ridge property. We have one outstanding verification item before we can schedule the final closing appointment. I set my coffee mug down on the counter very deliberately. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the property name? The Clearwater Ridge Drive property. Mr. Della. The purchase is listed at $550,000. Your name appears as co-borrower on the loan application alongside Cassidy Palumbo and Derek Palumbo. We just need a secondary form of government-issued identification to complete the file. The word co-borrower requires some explanation if you've never had it applied to you without your knowledge. A co-borrower doesn't just appear on a document. A co-borrower signs a mortgage application, provides financial documentation, formally certifies responsibility for the loan obligation. I had signed nothing. I had provided no documentation. I had never spoken to Summit Bridge Lending, had never heard of the Clearwater Ridge Drive property, and had not agreed to guarantee anyone's mortgage. Ms. Arman, what is the total purchase price of this property? A brief pause. $550,000. Sir, my kitchen was very quiet. Outside, the February hills were the color of old pewter. My name appears on this application as co-borrower. Yes, sir, alongside Cassidy Palumbo and Derek Palumbo. Ms. Arman, I need you to note in your records that I am formally disputing this application. I did not sign any documentation. I did not authorize my name to appear on any mortgage filing. I am asking you not to proceed with closing. Can you give me the name of your compliance officer? She gave me the name. I wrote it on the notepad I keep by the phone. I thanked her and hung up. I stood in that kitchen for approximately 2 minutes. Then I sat down at my desk, opened my Regions account online, and looked at every transaction in the authorized user history going back 2 years. Nothing irregular on the card itself. Cassidy hadn't charged the mortgage to the Regions card. What they'd done was something more precise. When I added her to the account 11 years ago, the bank's verification process required her to provide my social security number to confirm the primary account holder's identity. She'd had that number ever since. 11 years. And somewhere along the way, that number, combined with my credit history and her authorized user access, had been used to construct a mortgage application that named me as a financial guarantor on a property. I'd never been offered the choice to decline. My credit identity, 28 years of it, had been used like a tool from a drawer she'd been keeping for years, waiting for a project worth the reach. I did not call Cassidy. I called my attorney instead. His name is Warren Aldrich. He's been doing estate, family, and contract law in Millbrook Falls for 25 years. He has the manner of a man who has been told every version of every financial catastrophe a family can produce and remains, through some combination of experience and personal discipline, completely impossible to surprise. He picked up on the second ring. Warren, Frank Della, I have a situation. My son-in-law and daughter used my social security number and credit history to list me as co-borrower on a $550,000 mortgage in Nashville. The lender called me this morning for closing documents. 2 seconds of silence. Credit fraud. Most likely. Does she have authorized user access to any of your accounts? Regions Platinum. Since she was 22. Emergency use. Only documented. Discussed. Understood. Not a $550,000 house. Not a $550,000 house. Frank. Don't call her. Don't indicate you know anything. Come to my office at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Bring 36 months of account statements and your social security card. I'll be there at 10 till. I know you will. I made a fresh cup of coffee, which I drank standing at the window looking at the February hills. Because sometimes the most important thing you can do while the ground shifts beneath you is make yourself do something ordinary. I finished the cup. I got dressed. I went to find 28 years of financial records. Warren's office is in a converted brick building on Commerce Street in downtown Millbrook Falls. It smells like coffee and old paper. His paralegal, a woman named Denise, who has worked for Warren for 14 years and has the memory of a court stenographer and the expression of a person who has never once been caught off guard, had me seated with a water and a legal pad before Warren finished his previous call. Warren came in at 3:04, shook my hand, sat across the desk, and opened a fresh yellow pad. Walk me through everything. Frank, start with how the authorized user account was set up and don't omit anything. I walked him through it. The truck stop in Arkansas 11 years ago. The $289 radiator repair. The 11 years of periodic reasonable use. The explicit conversations about the card being emergency only. The phone call from Linda Harmon at Summit Bridge Lending at 9:22 that morning. Warren wrote without interrupting. When I finished, he tapped his pen on the pad. When the account was opened, when you added her as authorized user, did the bank require her to provide your social security number for verification? The answer arrived as I said it. Yes. Standard identity verification for the primary account holder. So she's had your social security number for 11 years. Warren set down his pen. She didn't use the Regions card for the mortgage. She used your social security number, your credit score, and your financial identity obtained legally through 11 years of authorized user access to construct a loan application naming you as co-borrower. That access gave her your identity. It did not give her the right to deploy it. This is credit fraud. Frank, he picked up his pen again. I'm going to pull your full credit report from all 3 bureaus right now, before anything else moves. Denise appeared in the doorway without being summoned. Warren pulled my Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian files in sequence and printed them. The stack he put on the table between us was 9 pages. 2 credit inquiries from lenders I'm guessing you don't recognize. 1 authorized user notation, your Regions card. 1 hard inquiry from Summit Bridge Lending dated last May. He looked at me. Frank, they started the application process 9 months ago. 9 months ago was May. Last May, I had helped Cassidy and Derek move a piece of furniture from a storage unit in Nashville. We'd had lunch afterward at a barbecue place on Gallatin Pike. Derek had talked about Nashville real estate the entire meal. He always talked about real estate. 9 months ago, while I was handing boxes down from a truck, the application was already underway. Warren, what are we filing? He looked at his notes. Then he looked at me with the expression of a man who has done this long enough to recognize when someone is ready to act. 3 things. An FTC identity theft report establishes the federal record, starts the clock on your legal protections. Dispute filings with all 3 credit bureaus to remove your name from the mortgage application. And a civil fraud complaint against Cassidy and Derek Palumbo in Warren County Circuit Court. He paused. The civil complaint triggers discovery. That means every email, every text message, every document related to this transaction becomes producible evidence. We file by Friday. File today if you can. He almost smiled. The controlled expression of someone who knows the difference between someone who is furious and someone who is positioned. FTC report goes out tonight. Disputes go to all 3 bureaus tomorrow morning. I'll have a civil complaint draft to you by Thursday evening. Filed Friday at 9 a.m. Don't call Cassidy. The moment she knows you're filing, Derek will start moving anything movable. I hadn't planned to call her. I drove home to Millbrook Falls in the February rain. Made dinner, grilled chicken. Nothing elaborate, and watched the evening news without absorbing a single word of it. Cassidy called at 8:45 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. By that point, I'd already been in Warren's office for 2 hours. The FTC report was half written, and I'd sent a text to my old colleague Dennis Pruitt, who runs a small investigative firm in Knoxville and had done background work for me twice when I was principal, once for a personnel matter. Once during a boundary dispute with a neighbor. Dennis is 60. Former Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Thorough and completely discreet. Dennis Frank Deller. Need a full financial profile on Derek Palumbo. 41. Commercial property developer. Nashville. Business entities. Prior litigation. Anything suggesting a pattern of using other people's assets or credit in his transactions. He replied 20 minutes later. On it. 48 hours. I went to bed at 10:30. I lay in the quiet of a February night in Millbrook Falls and thought about the decision chain. 29 years of running a high school teaches you one primary skill, working backward from a consequence to find the original decision point. A student makes a destructive choice on a Friday. You don't start by asking what happened Friday. You ask what happened Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, what small doors were opened and left open, what warnings weren't recognized, what moment was the last one where a different outcome was still available. I rebuilt the chain on Thursday morning. The starting point, the original open door, was a dinner at Cassidy and Derek's Nashville apartment during Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Derek had been talking about the real estate market, as he always did. He'd mentioned a development corridor north of the city where prices were beginning to move. I had said, "The way you say things at a holiday table, when everything feels warm and connected and the future seems full of reasonable possibilities, if you two ever find the right place, I might be able to help out with something toward a down payment someday." One sentence. No figure mentioned. No timeline. No commitment. A generosity reflex from a good dinner. Derek Palumbo had filed that sentence under operational. Dennis Pruitt called Thursday at 1045 a.m. "Frank, sit down first." I sat. Derek Palumbo has 4 LLCs registered in Tennessee. 3 are active commercial development entities. Nothing unusual on the surface. The 4th was registered in 2020. Dissolved in 2023. During that 3-year window, the LLC was named in 3 civil complaints, all settled out of court, involving allegations of misrepresented financial backing in commercial lease agreements. A pause. In plain language, he convinced counterparties that guaranteed financing existed when it didn't. Phantom credit. Used as leverage. What happened to the LLC? Dissolved 7 months after the 3rd settlement. My read, he settled each case. The LLC became too much of a liability. He shut it down and moved on. When was the 3rd settlement? October. 2 years ago. October. 2 years ago. 1 month before the Thanksgiving dinner where I'd mentioned helping with a down payment. Dennis. He dissolved that LLC 1 month before he sat down at my daughter's Thanksgiving table. I can't state that as a documented fact. Pause. But I can tell you the timeline is what it is. Send everything to Warren Aldrich. His contact is in my file. Already writing it up. After I hung up, I made a second cup of coffee and sat with it for a long time. Derek Palumbo had dissolved a liability LLC 1 month before Thanksgiving. He'd attended that dinner already, knowing he had 3 sealed civil settlements on record. He'd listened to his father-in-law make a loose, generous comment about maybe helping with a house someday. And he had gone home that night and begun to plan. Colin had identified an asset. He had spent 9 months building a transaction around it. The asset was my 28-year credit history. The vehicle, the person who held the keys, was my daughter. I had spent 29 years watching young people make destructive choices and understanding the difference between a mistake and a deliberate act. A mistake is fast, emotional, consequences underestimated. A deliberate act has a 9-month planning window, 3 bureau credit pulls, a monitoring service enrollment to track the score, and a Thanksgiving dinner that functions as reconnaissance. This was not a mistake. Thursday evening, I read Warren's civil complaint draft. It was 16 pages. It was, by any reasonable measure, a serious document. Warren had cataloged every unauthorized action, the use of my social security number without consent, the fabricated co-borrower status, the undisclosed, prior civil litigation history of one defendant, and had included a specific section characterizing the 9-month planning window as premeditated financial fraud rather than impulsive misuse. The distinction is legally significant. Premeditation carries substantially different exposure. The August credit monitoring enrollment, the May Hart inquiry, and Dennis's LLC dissolution timeline made the premeditation argument extremely strong. I marked 2 factual corrections, minor date issues, and emailed the corrected draft back to Warren at 7:55 p.m. Then I did something Warren had told me not to do. I called Cassidy. Not to warn her. Not to confront her. I had spent 3 days rebuilding the decision chain and understanding the architecture of what Derek had constructed. And I needed to hear whether my daughter was still in there underneath whatever she'd allowed herself to become inside this plan. She picked up on the first ring. Dad. Her voice was careful. The specific careful of someone who has been waiting and is trying to determine what the call means. I called Tuesday. She said, "You didn't." I know. I was handling something. A long pause. "Is everything okay?" "No." "Sweetheart. Nothing is okay." I kept my voice level. The principal voice, the one that gives away nothing before the right moment. "But I'm fine. I just wanted to hear your voice. Get some sleep." "Cass. You too." "Dad." I hung up and sat in the Millbrook Falls, quiet. Outside, the February hills were doing what February hills do in eastern Tennessee, holding their breath before spring. Giving away nothing. Patient as stone, Friday morning was coming, and so was 9 o'clock. The most effective thing a prepared man can do is nothing theatrical, no confrontation in a doorway. No phone call that becomes evidence on the wrong side. Just a Friday morning. A cup of coffee. And a document that arrives at someone's desk like a stone, dropped from a very significant height. Friday, February 21st. Warren Aldrich filed the civil fraud complaint in Warren County Circuit Court at 8:57 a.m. I was sitting on my back porch drinking coffee from a thermos when his text came in. Filed. Bawutsi. Process service initiated. Expect delivery within 48-72 hours. I put the phone in my jacket pocket and finished the coffee. The process server reached Derek Palumbo at his Nashville Commercial Development Office at 1:48 p.m. on Friday afternoon. The service confirmation arrived at Warren's office at 2:31 p.m. with a time-stamped signature. Derek Palumbo, named defendant, had personally signed for a 16-page civil fraud complaint at his own desk in front of his office assistant on a Friday afternoon. Warren called me at 3:15. Served. Both of them. The process server will reach Cassidy at the Clearwater Ridge Drive property this evening. She's been there all week. She was treating it as already hers. I let that sit for a moment. The credit bureau disputes are in processing. Summit Bridge Lending received the FTC notification this morning and has voluntarily paused the closing pending review. So the house is frozen. The house is frozen. Nobody is moving in. Nobody is closing. And Derek Palumbo has a 16-page civil fraud complaint with his dissolved LLC's litigation history attached as an exhibit. I looked out at the February hills. 29 years I'd worked in this town. Built something here. Institution by institution. Relationship by relationship. And for 9 months, while I was grading papers in my mind and making coffee and helping my daughter move furniture, my credit history had been the foundation of someone else's transaction. Warren, realistic outcome. The civil complaint creates substantial pressure. Derek's attorney will want to settle fast to avoid discovery. Because discovery means those 9 months of text messages and emails between him and Cassidy become producible. He will not want a jury to see evidence of a husband coaching his wife through the mechanics of using her father's social security number to buy a property. A pause. My offer will be unwind the mortgage. Remove your name from all Summit Bridge lending filings. Restore your credit. And pay my fees. In exchange, no criminal referral. And if they refuse, then we push the criminal referral, which adds Tennessee's identity theft statutes to the civil complaint. At that point, Derek's career in commercial property development becomes substantially more complicated. Send the offer. The settlement offer went out Friday afternoon. Derek's attorney, a Nashville commercial litigator named Gary Hewitt, called Warren the following Monday morning. The conversation, as Warren described it, lasted 9 minutes. By the end of it, Derek and Cassidy had agreed to unwind the mortgage application. Remove my name from all Summit Bridge lending filings. Cooperate fully with the credit bureau restoration process. And pay Warren's fees in full. In exchange, no criminal referral. No further civil action. The settlement was signed Wednesday, February 26th. My credit bureau records were corrected within 31 days. By the end of March, my report showed no unauthorized inquiries, no contested co-borrower applications, and a score that had dipped 9 points during the dispute process and recovered completely within 8 weeks. 28 years and 6 days of building something. 31 days to take it back. There is one more thing. The part I've been building toward because it requires honesty about something that isn't simple. On the Saturday after the settlement, March 1st, Cassidy called me. I answered. She was crying. Not the kind of crying that wants something, the other kind. The kind that comes out when the legal situation has resolved and there's nothing left to perform behind. And the weight of what you've done is the only thing left in the room with you. Dad, I don't know how. Then don't try to find the words yet. Derek said you had basically already agreed. He said it was understood. He said, Cass. My voice was level. The principal voice, but softer than usual. I know what Derek said. I've read the documentation. A long silence. You have. Discovery was part of the complaint process before the settlement was reached. Warren shared what was legally relevant. A pause. Cassidy. Derek took something you said and turned it into something you did. That part belongs to him. But you made the calls. You submitted the forms. You were present at every step. Another pause. That part is yours to carry. She didn't speak for a long time. Is it over between us? My daughter asking me that question. No, I said it simply because it was the simple truth. But it's different now. It'll be different for a while. I know. A breath. Derek moved out. 2 days after the complaint was filed. Her voice was quiet. I asked him to. I didn't say anything. I didn't let myself feel what I wanted to feel about that. I'm sorry. Cass. Are you? I'm sorry you're in pain. I'm not sorry I filed. A long pause. That's a very dad thing to say. 29 years of practice. She almost laughed. The real kind, brief and involuntary. The kind that escapes when something lands exactly right even in the middle of something broken. Can I call you sometime? Not about any of this. Just to talk. Call me Sunday. What time? 2 o'clock. I'll be on the porch. Okay. Get some rest. Cass. You too. Dad. I hung up and sat on the back porch of my house in Millbrook Falls in the last of the February light. The hills were doing the thing they do in late winter, still bare. Still patient. Beginning in some invisible way to consider the possibility of spring. Derek Palumbo had taken a loose, generous sentence, spoken at a holiday table and turned it into a 9-month plan. He had treated my daughter as a mechanism and my credit as fuel. He had dissolved one liability and moved on to the next without pausing for the people he passed through on the way. He had underestimated one thing, that the father-in-law whose financial identity he was deploying had spent 29 years in a building where the full arc of a bad decision was the daily curriculum. And he knew how to read a choice all the way back to the moment it was made. By the end of March, my credit was restored. The Clearwater Ridge Drive property was back on the market. Derek Palumbo had a civil fraud settlement on his professional record, and my daughter was calling me on Sunday afternoons at 2 o'clock. I was on the porch when she called that first Sunday. The hills of eastern Tennessee were beginning, tentatively, to show the first edges of green, the specific color of early spring in that part of the country. Almost too vivid to be credible. The kind of thing that happens whether you're watching it or not. 28 years of building something carefully, slowly. One decision at a time, they were exactly where I'd left them. Some things hold because you built them right. Some things hold because you refuse to let someone else take them apart. In the end, Those two things are the same thing.